All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Tank, I thought I'd bring you up in the beginning because we have a special format. Good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
Good. Well, thank you, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So, for those of you who don't know me, if this is your first time tuning into This is CDR, I'm the regular host, Chris Neidel. I wear a few different hats. I'm one of the founders of Open Air, who hosts this program, and I'm currently the carbon removal lead for the UN Climate Champions. And very relevant to today, I'm one of the co-founders and acting director of the Four Corners Carbon Coalition, which the program we're going to be talking about is a program of that amazing coalition. And you're going to meet one of my co-founders, Susie Strife, a little bit later on in the conversation, who is the director of the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience for Boulder County. You'll meet her in just a few minutes. But just wanted to pop in here first and have Tank up there. Also wanted to apologize for folks that we had to postpone this one a week. We were having some technical issues, which hopefully don't rear their head today, but I think we should be okay. Anything going on in your CDR world, Tank, this week?
Yeah. Well, this week, no, but last week I did give a presentation to a group of Taiwanese corporates, and that was my very first presentation with the business community in Taiwan. And yeah, I think everybody's very excited about what is happening in Asia, the development of CDR, and then how we're sort of lacking behind here in Taiwan. But yeah, but I think seeing what is going on in other countries sets out a model for businesses in Taiwan to follow. And yeah, so that was very interesting. And yeah.
Yeah, obviously talking to you, I've been thinking about Taiwan, you and Josh in a while, but since I've started this new position looking more globally, I've realized just how many bright spots there are in the world right now. So while we here in the US are sort of in a period of great uncertainty, there's really interesting things emerging in Latin America and certainly Europe and Africa. So, all right, well, Tank, I'm going to have you on some of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on, particularly as they pertain to demand. But what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is go ahead and give a little bit of presentation. Just my standard intro for This is CDR. Many folks have certainly been here before, but this is a usually weekly, we missed last week, Tuesday at noon Eastern program that we've been doing for a few years. And it focuses on really exposing a diverse, broad audience, CDR enthusiasts, people new to the subject, to what are we talking about when we talk about carbon dioxide removal, and particularly in reference to real things that are happening. So a lot of the episodes that we do, we're now well over 100. I think we're getting into 120 territory, are often with the leads of startups of a variety of different carbon dioxide removal companies. We often have science subject experts or policy subject experts, or sometimes if there's a launch of a new initiative like today, we'll have a special episode for it. Tank can drop our YouTube channel. You can look at all of our episodes going back to the first one a few years ago, and this will post immediately to that playlist. So today is a special episode because it's a new initiative that both came out of Open Air, had an important role to play in it in terms of the initial founding of Four Corners. But what I want to be able to do is talk a little bit about one new initiative that we're really excited about that's been boiling for a while. And finally, after nearly a year of planning, is finally going to be having its launch today. And that's the Community Carbon Removal Purchasing Challenge, which I'm going to talk about that and then run you through the steps of exactly what are the components of this challenge and how you can be involved, what are the goals. And I'll also show the web page as well, which has some useful tools which are going to continuously be added to as we go forward for the remainder of the year with this challenge. And so just a little bit of background. Again, you're going to meet Susie Strife in just a moment. Susie, myself, and Nicole Antonopoulos, who's the sustainability director for Flagstaff, Arizona, are really the founders who came up with the idea for Four Corners. And this is an organization, a coalition that started really just almost a little bit over 3 years ago. And the idea behind it was to activate local governments who have a critical role to play in driving momentum for carbon removal, to get them in a sort of a proactive posture of trying to move carbon dioxide removal along. And in a moment, I'll explain to you how that's a bit of a different dynamic that has conventionally been the case in the short history of carbon dioxide removal. The members that we have right now, in addition to the founding members of Boulder and Flagstaff, we also had Salt Lake City and Utah and Santa Fe, New Mexico join very, very early on. And then a little bit after that, Albuquerque. So these are the core members, all within the Four Corners states. That's where we get our name from. But over the course of 2025 and going forward, we look to keep expanding our membership of the different cities and counties and towns that actually participate in our coalition. And so, again, this is what our mission says, it I think quite clearly, is that, as I'll show you in a little bit of a graphic, it's the idea of not just educating governments, but can we actually take the local? And this, again, is counties, towns, big cities. I even think of neighborhoods of certain size could potentially qualify. That rather than just sort of getting them educated on carbon removal, how do we actually mobilize them so that they can actually be at the tip of the spear of making carbon removal happen in a range of different fronts? And so Susie will be familiar with this, and I've shared it in other presentations before, a version of this. But to kind of explain where we're coming from here, I want to maybe kind of explain what I think the conventional sort of dynamic is in carbon dioxide removal. And CDR is very much an industry that's been founded in science, led by startups, increasingly interested in by policymakers. There's a lot of different actors that are involved in trying to push this ball up a hill. And often the local community, whether it's a big city, a rural farming community, or a small town, tend to be thought of as sort of the passive environments in which CDR has to happen, that you need to get sort of permission of or engage with. And so it's very much sort of, as we always use the metaphor of sort of a UFO, a lot of these local places, when they hear of carbon dioxide removal, it's sort of coming from on high. And on high takes many different shapes, increasingly, certainly under the Biden administration, but at the state level and other places, it might be the government that they're hearing about it. The scientific consensus from the IPCC down. If you're following climate, you may have heard about it from that sort of rarefied air. In many local places, your first time hearing about different forms of carbon removal might be from an actual CDR startup or company or a supplier that has an interest in the area you're in because it's suitable for that technology. And then we have some of the large corporate actors that have played a pretty heroic, important role in being the buyers or creating the initial demand and paying for carbon dioxide removal from projects. But in general, it's a sort of a top-down type of dynamic. And as I said, for our mission is that we want to sort of flip that, where it's really the local communities where people increasingly are hearing about carbon removal or understanding what carbon removal is within the framework of their own communities or communities like theirs that they've heard about interesting projects from. And there's multiple things that we've seen in terms of the role that a local community can be, in addition to just being the setting in which different forms of carbon removal happens. But they can play a really, really important role, if there's interest there, in clearing hurdles or helping with the educational effort, which overall accelerates the rate at which projects can actually happen. We've also find and believe that, as we know with carbon removal, there's so many different forms of it. It's very different from other areas of climate tech, fundamentally different forms of carbon removal based on different engineering and science and operating conditions. And a lot of times when they're conceived of, they're kind of conceived in a sort of an idealized, abstract environment that it needs X, Y, and Z to work. But when you actually are on the ground and you're looking around at the resources that are there and how they're used by the local community or what the community's priorities are in terms of what to do with certain resources, that actually creates new ideas. And you can actually extend what we think about the use cases for carbon dioxide removal. And then what we also think, as we often see, is that it's one thing to be convinced that carbon removal is a good thing from those sources that I mentioned from behind, whether it's the news media or the government or from science. But we believe that if you start to get more local places around the United States and around the world that are the ones that are driving carbon removal, these places talk to each other. There's a peer influence where you can see a sort of a horizontal acceptance and support happening because of the leadership of local governments. And then lastly, when you start to have a yes vote or a we support carbon removal, either in concept or through specific contributions or projects that are supported, that plays very importantly into the political discourse around carbon removal. In order for carbon removal to reach scale, we're going to need policies at every level of government to intervene in order to help scale. And that is a difficult ask right now if it's only coming from a limited number of sources, however compelling they may be. If we start seeing a universe of local governments and communities that are saying yes to this and why, that can drive momentum upward for more political support. So that's the sort of the four quadrants. Everything coincidentally relates to the number 4 with 4 corners. But these are some of this kind of superpowers we think that local communities have. Now, what we're looking to do with local communities as well, which is very relevant to this program, is that we want to progress to this support level, okay? And support is where you actually have a YIMBY type of effect, where local places and different stakeholders and members of those communities say, yes, we want those. All of that, to get to that point, though, it's sort of a hierarchy of needs in terms of getting to support. First, it starts with knowledge. What is carbon dioxide removal? What are the different forms of it? Why do we need it? And then you progress up to, okay, I get it. We need that acceptance. And then again, support is that proactive position of let's make that happen here. And so our goal to the programs that we do is to move through that progression from knowledge to full-fledged support. And once you've achieved support, some things that can really, really click in terms of what local governments can do that I referred to before, then you might have, okay, we're going to make sure that the permitting is right for this, or we're going to make sure that we put a spotlight on this opportunity for a carbon removal project locally. Or in some cases, as are available among the options that we'll talk about for the challenge, there's many different forms of carbon removal that can be obviously implemented directly, sometimes with local government actual leadership, things that embed within local infrastructure. So these are things that can happen when we get to support. And then the other side of that is that with carbon dioxide removal, we're seeing good progress, and Tank can speak to this when I pull him back up. The name of the game is as we're developing these technologies and we're proving them out, the way that they're going to get from nothing to something, by that means from kilotons to gigatons or billions of tons where we need to get, that has to, we need demand. We need those early adopters who are willing to say, I am going to buy the service of getting carbon removed from the atmosphere from different companies. And local governments, while individually aren't going to be huge players like the national government or even a major corporate like Microsoft, but in aggregate, that can start to add up and they can be an important source of demand. Now, what we have done over the last few years since we founded at Four Corners is we focused on one particular program model that we think is very much aligned with the goals that I just laid out. And those are what are called catalytic grant campaigns. And the way that those have worked is that our members, who I showed before, they join together, they pool funds together, and then they think of a theme that's related to carbon dioxide removal that's also important locally for different reasons that are locally specific. And we've run 2 of these years back to back, 2003 and then last year in 2004. The first one we did was CDR and concrete. And that was selected because concrete is inherently local. It's made everywhere. Every community is going to have a concrete batch plant or other provider within close proximity to them. But those Four Corners states are also among the fastest growing construction in regions in the country. So there's going to be a lot of concrete poured. So it was locally relevant. And so there we put out a RFP or an application for CDR companies and other partners that said, I have a solution that can remove and put carbon dioxide in concrete. And so we ran that in partnership with Carbon Direct, which brought amazing technical expertise. We solicited a number of different applications. We had a pool of about $400,000. And we ultimately awarded 4 different grants to 4 different projects, which are 2 of them already completely done, 2 are still in progress because it can have a little bit of a long tail. And that is where we learned how to kind of run this type of model. And it was excellent. And if you go to our website, fourcornerscarbon.org, and you click on our campaigns, you can actually read a little bit about that and the organizations and companies that we funded. The following year, we did the same type of model. And this time it was CDR plus liability biomass. So here we're talking about forms of biomass that either we don't want around or there's more higher value uses we can use for them. And a big reason why this was important in the Western states is because of forest fire risk and the need to mitigate that. So we were thinking of that when we said, are there forms of CDR that can do both of those, where we could take some of this biomass that we don't want in a particular place because either a risk or a cost, and then do something with it to take carbon out of the air. And on This Is CDR, we've had a number of different types of companies that fall within this category that we've interviewed before. And so this was very similar amount of money that we pulled together, gave out 4 more grants as well. That was last year. And some of those projects are already complete. Again, you can go to our website, fourcornerscarbon.org, and take a look at that campaign. You can see videos and descriptions of what those awards were and why we did it. And then most recently, earlier this year, we did something which was a little bit of a tweak on the original model, which was the Hudson Valley Biochar Pioneers Program. And this was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it was our first project. Four Corners has always had a vision of expanding wherever we can around the world over time. Our origin point is in the Four Corners states, but we'll go wherever over time to do campaigns and activities if there are willing participants at the local level. And this was done in the Hudson Valley region of New York State. That's an area where I actually originate from. And here we worked with local nonprofit organizations, Sustainable Hudson Valley and Cornell Cooperative Extension. And we discovered this is a very, very important agricultural area in the state. And there's already some interest in biochar. And we decided, what if we did a campaign where we raised some money and were able to give grants to 10 to 15 farmers in the region to try biochar for the first time on a single acre. And so we went through that process. All of the biochar was delivered about 2 months ago and has now been applied. If you go to our site, you can see some videos. We're still completing the campaign page for that, but that went exceptionally well. We had 10 and there's still 2 more going. And the idea is to just promote biochar and get these early pioneer biochar adopters to be our sort of mouthpieces, to be able to sort of express to other farmers in their communities why they did it. And we're working with Cornell Cooperative Extension, who's doing a before, middle, and after soil test to be able to actually measure the impact. So that was the most recent one. Now, these all mostly pertain to kind of the supply side, sort of making these projects happen in the real world. And we're going to continue to do those both within the Four Corners states and elsewhere as the months and years go by. But what we're doing with this campaign is more of a focus on demand. How do we start mobilizing local communities and governments to help start dabbling or getting involved in supporting or purchasing carbon dioxide removal? And so the objective is between now and the end of the year, and again, I can foresee this every year happening with a different crop of suppliers, but we want to get as many communities around the world, around the United States, to sign up to make a purchase of carbon dioxide removal from a set of pre-qualified suppliers that we have listed on our website. And I'll explain where they came from and how they were chosen in a second. And again, if you can envision that if between now through the summer into the fall and up to the end of the year, we start getting dots on the map all over the country from different places, whether they're tiny towns or counties or big metropolises like where I am right now in New York, that have at least gotten to the point where they said yes to carbon removal, and we are going to explore and learn about carbon removal through this purchase, which then might open other doors for other types of activities around CDR implementation. And so when we think about this, as I showed you that hierarchy of needs before for moving from knowledge to support, This is part of that. And really what it's doing is it's taking demand, the activity of getting together with a group of people in your community to have to look at different forms of carbon removal suppliers and make a choice for which ones you're going to support based on whichever criteria you may apply, because you think that that is something that you'd like to see in your community, or you think that that's going to have the biggest global impact. It could be any number of reasons. By going through that exercise with others and talking about it with others, that is an amazing way to boost and accelerate the progression from knowledge to support. That's our theory of the case here. And so what we're doing, again, this isn't about getting any community, whether it's New York City or, El Paso, Texas, or wherever it may be. It's not about the amount of money that each community pledges for. It's about getting many different places making those choices that I just described. So what we recommend is a target of $5,000. Now, if you want to do more than that, you can, but we think 5,000 is a good target to shoot for, because it's kind of within that magical sort of Goldilocks range where usually through friends and families for and neighbors and people that you have directly within your network, that is the sort of the ceiling for that, where you can hit that goal. So we think it's very, very achievable, but certainly people can exceed that, or if they reach that target, we can, leave it open and maybe you get 7,000 or 10,000. But that's what we're recommending, just to sort of set expectations for what a community, if they do sign up for this, what their target would be. And so there's different types of campaigns that people can sign up for. And we'll see how these evolve over time. I'm going to talk a second where after this webinar, I'm not just going away. We're going to have a weekly sort of workshop where people can come on. We'll talk about special subjects. If someone's considering it doing in their community, we can troubleshoot or help them out. But one of these campaign types, which we've divided into 3, these might mutate and evolve as people start trying to actually run campaigns. But the way that we think about it, or we foresee it, is one type of campaign could be the local government itself. Right now, I'm in conversation with sustainability directors from a whole slew of different cities who are considering it, and towns, okay? So in that case, you might have somebody who's the director of sustainability or the mayor's office, or some other agency head that's relevant. Go ahead and lead this. They're the ones who are going to pick the supplier, and they'll provide the funds for it. And then, ta-da, you've reached your goal, and then it's done. So it's the government that went ahead and led it. Another way of doing it is just citizen-led, where you might not be able to get your local government involved, or you might not know. This would be a case where individuals, neighbors, businesses, colleges would basically do a crowd fund, and they'd set up a committee whereby they come up with some criteria, which we can help you with, for which type of supplier they're going to pick, okay? And then they go ahead and raise that target. There's even a version of that, just because I couldn't comfortably fit 4 on there, where you could have a single individual from a single town say, all right, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to kind of lead it myself and then promote it among my neighbors and my contacts within my city. There's different iterations of that. The one that I think might be the most impactful and the most common is a hybrid, where you have a partnership or a connection between the local government and citizens, right? So it could work in a couple of different ways, where you get a group of citizens that come together, maybe a group of college students at, in some college town, or whoever, a group of neighbors on a block, a Rotary Club. They go to the local government and they say, hey, we want to do this. Do you support it? And then together they pick a supplier. Or it could be that the citizens select it, and then the local government endorses it and makes some contribution. There's many different ways in which that can happen. But that, to me, is a really high impact one, because it involves both people in a place talking about it and educating others with their government involved. So these are sort of the typologies or campaign types that we can see being set up. Now, let me talk about the suppliers that we have for this. So one of the limitations that we find for almost everybody, but at the local level in particular, is that people are still learning, like, what are the different carbon dioxide removal technologies, and how do they relate to where I am? And how do I know if one is good or not, or real or credible? These are big barriers for people to make a choice, because you want to put your resources towards things that are going to result in impact. And so what this does, and this is explained on our website in the FAQ, here we really descend from a federal program under the Biden administration. It was a pilot that really got going towards the end of that administration. It was called the Carbon Dioxide Removal Purchasing Prize. And then there was a challenge where the Department of Energy was able to, there was a budget item for $35 million. And they decided we're going to, as the government, procure carbon dioxide removal from different companies. Now, that wasn't a tremendous amount of money for federal government, okay? But there's a lot of really amazing advantages that came from that program. One is that they were able to come up with a framework and criteria to judge, review a variety of different carbon dioxide removals that submitted applications on a competitive basis. These were hundreds of companies that actually submitted to participate to see if the government would buy some of their carbon removal. And so they were able to get subject experts from national labs, from academia, from within government to actually do the review and analysis to ultimately pick 24 semifinalists. Now, we don't know what the future of that program is. It doesn't look good. We might know, as of this week, it looks like it's been discontinued with the new administration. But the legacy of that is that we have these suppliers that were selected under this rigorous process that now we can use as local governments running campaigns, participating in campaigns, where we can say, okay, I trust that it went through that process. That's good enough for me. So what we did at Four Corners is we reached out to those 24 semifinalists. Some were not in a good position to participate in this. Some were a little ways off. Some couldn't. So we narrowed it down, and there might be two more that will join this week if I can get the information from them. We narrowed it down to 8 different suppliers, and these represent a variety of different forms of carbon dioxide removal, which is what we wanted. We wanted it to be, as a way of participating in it, you could look at many different types of solutions and learn about it. So some might be what we call, biomass carbon removal and sequestration, that use nature's ability to sequester carbon through photosynthetic means, but they engineer a way to store that carbon so that it doesn't break down and return. We have direct air capture. We have ocean alkalinity enhancement. And so it's a real good biochar. There's a real good variety here that give people some slice or a sense of the spectrum of carbon removal rather than one type. And so that is the overview of it. I'm going to pause for a second before I go ahead and show the website to show you how to use it a little bit. And I'm just going to invite my buddies up here real quick and to just see if they have any sort of questions at all. And while I do it, I'm going to introduce Susie, who I alluded to. Susie is, I always embarrass her when I talk about it, but is really in the world in very rare company in terms of a local government leader who said, we're doing carbon removal a long time ago. We need to do it. And has really set an incredible example for other local governments all over the country and all over the world. And is one of the founding members, along with myself with Open Air and Flagstaff, Arizona, of the Four Corners Carbon Coalition. And she's been very involved in carbon removal programming and funding. So Susie, how you doing? Good to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. Thanks so again for the opportunity.
Yeah, we got it. And Tank, I didn't know. I wanted to just see if I kind of ran through that pretty quickly. Didn't know if anybody had any comments on what they heard or sort of any questions. If not, I can show the website, but figured you guys would. It's the first time you guys are seeing it as well. So Tank's going.
I muted myself. Yes, we did get 2 questions. So maybe we can go to the first one here from Nadine. She asked, you were speaking about high quality carbon removal. And so she had a question of, can you define what is high quality in this case and what makes the suppliers qualified?
Yeah, so there's, again, one of the benefits, and I was able to kind of see on the inside of this while it was operating a bit. When the DOE put this together, they had, in fact, I think we do have it in the FAQ that explains what is it that they were actually selecting for. So they wanted durability was one. Is this, are you going to have multiple centuries of storage? And is there a way that there's a monitoring, reporting, and verification methodology that they are confident enough in that can demonstrate to us that, yes, that this type of solution would do that? They also looked at a review of the commercial situation or status of a company. What kind of investment have they had? What kind of staff do they have? Do they have relevant, internal expertise? Another thing they did is a big part of it was the community impact and how do they actually engage with local communities? Can they demonstrate not only that this will do no harm, but are there quantifiable different economic, environmental benefits that would actually come with this? And how are they going to relay that to communities? So those were the kind of the three things that the various folks from the national labs and the DOE reviewed the different suppliers from. And they also had it baked into the cake from the beginning. They wanted diversity as well. They didn't want to just go for, we're going to do all direct air capture, we're going to do all biochar, we're going to all DRW. They had these sort of master categories that we're kind of roughly following, because they wanted to show that there's a variety of different ways to reach high quality carbon removal through very different means that also can be localized in different ways in different parts of the country. So that was the kind of the master criteria. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, great. There's another question, Victor, and I think this is more general in CDR in general. Victor did ask that, is there a holistic verification standard for CDR technologies?
Victor, good to hear. Victor's a brilliant Nigerian geologist who does incredible things over there. Good to see you join here, Victor. There's common criteria by which, again, the durability and permanence, additionality, cost, co-benefits. What are the ones I'm missing? There's a list of 10 different things that we typically judge by. But because we're not talking about like renewable energy where the output is always electrons that can be metered directly, there's one of the blessings and the curse of CDR is that we have so many different ways of doing it. But then that means that you have unique ways that you have to figure out how are you going to actually validate that this happened and what the impact is going to be and for how long. So if you compared something like biochar versus ocean alkalinity enhancement versus direct air capture and storage, these are very different things. So there have to be standards that are developed that specifically pertain or brought to bear on that particular kind of pathway. But again, against those criteria that I mentioned. So you have, Isometric and Puro and other organizations that work on those standards. And increasingly, we're going to see governments likely developing those standards as well.
Great. Kirsch had a question about, just love to understand how the carbon credit generation and transfer mechanism will work for these projects. So do you expect these projects to generate the credits via a registry? And if so, does the local partner have to be the exclusive buyer?
So this is actually a good question. And I left it out in my rush. We were going to have Taylor from TerraSet on, but she had a conflict and wasn't able to make it because she's at a conference. Our partner with Four Corners, as of earlier this year, is the amazing company, which I'll drop the link. And if you have a free hand, Tank, is TerraSet, which some of you might be familiar. And TerraSet is a nonprofit organization that exists to grow, build, and scale demand for carbon dioxide removal. And because they're set up as a nonprofit, what they do is they qualify different CDR companies, many of which are already in our supplier list, and some have been added because of our supplier list. And they go out to individuals, institutions, corporations, and try to broker the sale of carbon removal tons to those folks. And one of the benefits that TerraSet brings that is going to be at play in this program is that because they're a nonprofit, when that purchase is made, it's a tax deductible purchase, right? So if individuals or tax-paying entities decide to contribute to this doesn't apply to governments, obviously, but to the extent that citizens or people in a community or businesses are participating, they can get a tax deduction for that. These are actually not credits. This is really very much about The reason why we're participating in this is to drive the availability of these technologies as we go forward. Just like with Four Corners, the things that we do through our catalytic programs, we're not counting credits. Our mission is to say we want these things to happen, and we understand how catalytic grants and how demand plays a role in that, right? So it doesn't have the same stringent criteria that credits do and retiring credits, but it is a purchase that once that ton is delivered by the supplier within the next 12 to 24 months, buyers will know that it happened. That it has to be verified, but it's not part of the formal carbon dioxide removal credit market. Thanks, Tank, for dropping that. And Kirsch is an amazing scientist as well, from a DAC company that will be on our This Is CDR pretty soon as well. I won't out you there, Kirsch, but we've already talked about it and would love to have you in one of these challenges in the future.
Great.
All right.
So folks have more questions, yeah, feel free to drop it in the comments or in the chat, and we'll get to them. But yeah, Chris,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what I'm going to do is just give a quick review of the page, and then me and Susie will talk a little bit, because Boulder County is our very first dot on the map, not a surprise. And me and Susie worked on this and reviewed the different suppliers. And she, on behalf of the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action and Resilience at Boulder County, has made a selection. So we'll break that news today for you. And then any other feedback you have, Susie, too, we'll talk a little bit about, again, a lot of this, the DNA of this comes directly from the kind of stuff that you've been doing, obviously, and you've been a core partner on it. But what I'll do first is just want to show you the site itself. And this is going to be very much a content heavy. There's stuff that I was trying to get on there. There's a bunch of other things that will be continuously added. I think that one of the things that's going to be most significant is the conversation, right? And so every Thursday at 3:00 Eastern, I'm going to pop in here. Other people can come in and join as well. If you're considering doing a campaign, if you are doing a campaign and you're trying to figure out who to pick, or you've already picked a supplier and now you're trying to raise funds and you've come up with an interesting way of doing that, we will have a conversation and we will stream it so other people can actually learn from it. We'll take every single one of those episodes and add it to our library. So we're all going to discover how this works out together. What I'll also do is I'll pull in people who might be a subject expert in a particular form of carbon removal. They can speak about it generally. So people might be like, I don't know, do I want to do biochar? Do I want to do ocean alkalinity enhancement? We're going to keep having these short conversations with credible experts from academia and from other academic institutions or national labs to fill in those blanks. And we'll occasionally bring on some of the suppliers who might have news that they, want to break. And so it'll be very informal, but it'll be the kind of thing where hopefully together we'll be able to learn together, discover best practices, and celebrate our wins. So this is how the site works right now. Again, there'll be some changes to it as we go. And again, it's on the Four Corners website. So I do encourage you to go ahead and take a look at the other parts of our site, which has a lot of great information on that, which I'm quite excited about. But on the page here, just on the top, we go into a little bit of what our main objectives are. So this is sort of our mission statement about why you'd want to join. And then this is the campaign map, which when you click on the yellow dots, it just tells you of where the different suppliers are. And you can click on that and it'll take you down to their supplier page, right? So it's just a good little but people might say, hey, is there a company that's near me? That might be one of the reasons why they picked them. So it shows you the good spread of the different companies and where they are. The purple one, I'm not going to click on it yet, but that's Boulder County. So that's our very first dot on the map. So any of you come on where you might be, if you're in, Seattle or wherever you may be, as you come in and you sign up, which will show you how to do it, your dot will go on the map and it'll show who you picked and it'll show you where it is that you are towards your goal. And that's also a shareable little link that you'll see that you'll be able to actually send on social media and say, this is where you can contribute to mine. Okay. Now this normally we'll have a video. I'm going to get rid of these. These are just to demonstrate that the way it'll work is that all of the cities or towns or localities that sign up will be on here, and you'll be able to sort by state. So if we suddenly have a bunch of them in California, rather than having to look through all of them, you can just click on California, and then in alphabetical order, it will show you. These are just the very simple pages because this was a government-led program that the $5,000 has already been reached. Oh, sorry, it's Crew Carbon. I screwed that up. We'll talk about that in a second. Boulder County has selected Crew Carbon, very, very cool company, which we'll talk about in a second. And what I'm going to do, Susie and I will talk about this in just a few minutes. When you start a new campaign, you can upload a video saying, why are you excited to be doing this, and who have you picked? And that will go on there, but we don't have a video yet for it. Right now, I have the contribute now on there in case I can activate this. If other people in the Boulder area want to contribute beyond the 5,000, they can do it. Okay. So this will be a sortable and linkable place that shows where the campaign is. Very simple. Now, this is the supplier page here, which when you click on different companies, it gives you a little bit of background on there. You can go to their website. It says what type of CDR they do, what the cost per ton is, which, you're saying, all right, I'm going to raise 5,000. I'm curious how many tons of carbon removal that accounts to, where they're based. You can click on their website. Then if you go to background, it has some more information, like what are some of the awards or milestones they've already hit? Where are they already doing projects? What year were they founded in? How many employees do they have? And who are part of their leadership team? Who are the real people behind this company? Where do they come from? And what do they do? And then for the resource page here, this will load in a second. This is one of these bugs, but doesn't affect the ability to access the information. We put some information of recent news that you can read. And then we also have videos. There's another one for ION that we're adding that we just received. This is CDR. We interviewed them last year. It's a deep dive into their technology. And as more and more videos come, there might be, we can continuously add them. This is just the project page. It just gives a couple of things with a little, explaining what you're seeing here. This is a big pile of olivine here, and you can click on those. So this will continue to be built out as we go with a couple of little tweaks that get added to it. Here is just the basic campaign stages that, again, there's a few blog posts that we're finishing up that will link to these. That just gives you sort of a sequence of what it means to start a campaign. Here's your selecting your supplier. This just links you back up to the thing that I just showed you. When you're ready to go public, after you, and whether you're a government representative or it's a group of community members, and you've picked it, that is when you want to go public, and you click on here, and this takes you to a form where you give us all the information and resources that allows us to create a dot on the map in one of those cards for your place. And then, you can go ahead and explore these, but it just gives you some basic information. And again, more content and information will be continuously added to give people more direction towards best practices. And then we have a bunch of different facts down here, and all the questions about the DOE program that I mentioned before is in here. And I think is pretty useful as well. So that's how that works. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And then, of course, if you just want to generally contact me or Four Corners with an inquiry about this or anything that Four Corners do, you can just click on that contact, and there's a form where you put your name, your address, and location, and we'll receive it and get back to you. So was my screen not up the entire time I was doing that, or?
No, it was perfect.
Oh, it was. Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. All right. So with that, Susie, as our sort of ground zero here for the campaign, I think it's important that, Boulder County is not just any place. Boulder County really is in the lead of this. So I first wanted to see, Susie, if you could just explain a little bit about the meaning of carbon removal, how it sort of surfaced within your work as the person who's the administrator for all of Boulder County's sustainability and climate programs.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks again, Chris. Such a great opportunity to be here. So like many cities and counties, Boulder County has aggressive climate goals, and we totally understand that direct emission reductions are not sufficient really to stem the worst impacts of climate change. So we're leaning into CDR as a much needed complementary strategy. This does not mean that our focus is shifting away from deep and rapid emissions cuts, because I know communities often think, oh, if you're focused on CDR, then that means you're not focused on deep and rapid emissions reductions. We can do both. It really means that we just understand we have a distinct role to play in fostering responsible CDR at the community level, especially in ways that align with our values of equity, accountability, and local climate action. So I said this before on other opportunities, other webinars, but I truly believe that local government actors are the first responders to the climate crisis in our communities. We bear the growing burden of preparing for, responding to, and recovering from climate-related disasters. So we know firsthand what's actually happening at the ground floor of our communities and how climate is impacting us. As a consequence, though, we have very limited resources, and we want to be able to spend those limited resources on localized, place-based, or what I call charismatic projects. And that also relates to carbon removals, because we really want real co-benefits in our community. So the other piece of it is that we know that climate change does not affect everyone equally. It intensifies existing inequities. And so for us, because we're centered a lot of our climate work on justice, this our work in CDR also is justice related and equity related. And it fits, so the strategy for us in CDR fits really into a larger holistic framework rooted in equity and community values. So through Four Corners and a lot of our local climate innovation funds, which I like to say are sort of philanthropic catalyzing funds to get things off the ground, we've been exploring pathways, as Chris said, like biochar, regenerative ag, forest health, that not only draw down carbon, but also build those co-benefits like good jobs and restoration of our ecosystems. The other piece I'll say is that we don't see CDR as a techno fix. We see it as a tool that must be deployed responsibly, transparently, and equitably with our community in mind and community input first. So I think that's a good framing for how communities and CDR kind of combine.
And one of the things, Susie, that we've always has been our sort of gospel, which is not a gospel because it's just so true. When I was showing from the local level, there's that discovery that can happen there because you're not looking from a 30,000 feet and thinking sort of generically about conditions, but you're thinking about how could this fit in here and what other kind of benefits, could it have? And in the vividness of that view, I think is most powerful at the local level. And that's the other thing too. I mean, as someone now who it's been a few years that you've been doing carbon removals since before we met. So I don't even remember when you actually started, but I think it was this idea that when you do certain forms of carbon removal, you can get acceptance from people locally because they can understand it in a very specific way about what it's going to do. And I'm wondering, has that been your experience? You face the public, you're a resident of Boulder. How do you feel like this program that we've done so far, people have what's been the response, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky. We're teaming with climate scientists here in Boulder, Colorado. We have tons of national labs. We have a lot of work ahead of us, given current conditions of those national labs. But we've only gotten, and knock on wood, we've only gotten real positive response because what we're saying is we're accelerating community-based carbon removal. And what makes that so powerful is that it's not just focused on short-term carbon math, which was a great question that was asked. It's about catalyzing innovation in a local context. So we're prioritizing projects that have long scale potential, but first immediate local benefits. And I think that's why this particular purchasing campaign fits beautifully into this bigger picture, because it's not just about removing carbon removal, it's sort of redefining how carbon removal is done and who it serves. And I see this as, like we've talked about this before, Chris, where this is seed funding to help get promising CDR projects off the ground, projects that reflect community values and local character. And what I found so cool about this is that it's aggregating purchasing power from a ton of local governments. There are 3,000 local governments that have climate action plans across the United States. And even if we put in small bits, because this has been a highly vetted process with technical experts decide, like really helping us vet these actors and these businesses and companies, we can have a real impact at scale. If we all contribute little pieces of our budget, our limited budget and precious resources, we can actually have a humongous impact. And I love thinking about that, because we're not going to be the major actor with the billions of dollars going into CDR. We're going to be small scale philanthropic donors, but at the same time, we have a real role to play at that local level, sharing what our community values are, because everyone's going to end up in our local permitting office anyway. So I just see it as a very beautiful union of a lot of different values and real climate action in our community.
Yeah, and if I could, Susie, just before we do the drum roll, even though I already showed the logo, is the one thing that I brought up in my presentation, which this wasn't sort of in the topics I said to you before, but I think you can answer this in your sleep because I know it's a subject of interest to you, is that there are really, we look at this as, again, it's a $5,000 commitment. As I tried to stress, it puts people in a position which so many times people, I think about carbon removal in sort of abstract terms, and that doesn't get them to sort of advance closer to it, right? But if you're put in a position where you have to make a decision, even if it's for, a relatively small amount of money, that exercise, I think, sort of gets people thinking. But there's two kind of major courses here that you can see influencing people's decision-making that I know you've been in yourself. One is, could I see this happening here? Even though this project might be in another state, I like that because I want to see this happen here. But then there's the other part where cities like Boulder and the now hundreds and well over 1,000 local governments that have declared net zero or a climate emergency, and they've done the math and they realize it is going to be almost impossible to just directly decarbonize. And they've had the conversation about offsets, and there's a lot of suspicion around that. So they also are potentially future buyers of carbon removal as some portion of that. So I'm wondering, I know you've been on both ends of this, and I didn't know if that matches your experience in terms of how a program like this is useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you can sort of support something that you can see in your region and it gets buy-in and excitement at the local level, it's an entry point, right? For communities that are flirting with the idea of CDR but don't know where to start. This is the place to start. It's a highly vetted, it gives me a lot of reprieve. I am not a technical CDR expert. I have been in cahoots, I guess, or with you and other technical experts, right? Like the DOE and Carbon Direct and others that have vetted these proposals. And I feel very confident in all their criteria because we're seeing it from the community lens and they're seeing it from the basically the technical CARP CDR lens of like what's possible and what's scalable and looking at it from all different angles there. So I think one of the pieces that I love about this work is that it's humanizing carbon removal. And I know that sounds very bizarre, but from my lens and my perch, it brings charisma and relevance into what is often a highly technical conversation. We get to tell the stories about how this plays out in our community. And they're often extremely positive and they can link to policy pretty quickly, like statewide policy change. So it's sort of like this amazing effect where you might have a small scale project like a decentralized biochar that brings in legislators pretty quick because of all the positivity around it. We're thinking about
that happened. Remember, Susie?
I did. I was just, it
2 years ago, we passed the carbon management roadmap bill in Colorado, which itself has already given rise to another piece of legislation that passed. And I was involved in the writing and advocacy for that. And it just hit me like a bolt of lightning where I didn't have to tell them about the IPCC. I just had to say, look what Boulder is doing. That's what we're talking about. And so that was one of the little boxes I had in here, is that it creates a ground up political momentum, which is absolutely necessary. Nothing that we've done on the climate space hasn't had that component. It can never come down from on top. You need to have those adopters and those enthusiasts that really drive it up. But let's do this without further delay. And there is a question from Nadine, which we'll take right after, but I don't want to delay any further. Let me go ahead and pull up this. And so as you already saw, because I spoiled it before, but you had a tough choice to make, Susie, because you're already so active through our campaigns in different forms of carbon removal. So you went with Crew Carbon, which I'll just explain real quickly. Very, very cool company that's based in both Brooklyn and New Haven, Brooklyn, New York, and New Haven, Connecticut. And this is one of those examples of the highly embedded forms of carbon removal that kind of live inside and add value to other forms of infrastructure that are ubiquitous and are often managed by local governments. And in this case, these are wastewater treatment facilities, which, you know, we have 8,000 of them, I think, in the United States alone. And this is a form of enhanced weathering that's built into it, where it takes the alkaline-rich materials that move through wastewater and it's able to mineralize them in a very controlled and monitorable way. So we do have, which Tank, if you're able to look up on YouTube, this is CDR and Crew Carbon, you can drop that in there. And people can also look at it on the website because I include that video. But Susie, I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about what drew you to this, because it was a tough decision.
Yeah. So as I said before, we've already sort of made strong progress locally through Four Corners and some of the Boulder County initiatives to support biochar, CDR in the built environment with concrete, and other CDR approaches to wildfire risk or liability biomass. While we deeply value those strategies and will continue to invest in those, this campaign, we wanted to use our purchasing power to explore something new. And ultimately, Crew Carbon stood out as a solution that we're not yet deploying, but one that could add value to our region. And I think basically the unique approach to enhanced rock weathering by integrating it into wastewater treatment facilities rather than applying it onto agricultural lands, that immediately stood out to us. In Boulder County, our soils aren't really ideal for agricultural ERW due to their low acidity, but wastewater infrastructure, that's something that we already have. And so by purchasing from Crew through this campaign, we're not only buying carbon removal, like we're supporting carbon removal, but we're building a relationship basically with an innovative company. And we're excited about it. It hits the sweet spot for us. It's innovative and proven and not yet implemented here. So we're really excited to announce our commitment there.
Yeah. And from my new apartment, I just moved back to New York City from Austin, Texas this weekend, which is one of the reasons why my life is crazy right now. I can actually see where their office is from my window.
Hey, that's so cool.
Brooklyn Navy Yard. So
Nice.
very, very good choice. So congratulations to Crew Carbon. They'll be very excited to learn, and much gratitude to Susie and Boulder County for getting us started. Susie, there was a question there, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to share with Nadine. Had a question about some of the co-benefits from Boulder County's other programs. Nadine, I'll put my email if you stick around. There's so many resources. There's on our website, Four Corners, there's the playbook. If you go to the CDR 101, there's good reads, and there's 2 papers that Boulder County and Carbon Direct produced around the local experience of CDR that features the work that Boulder County did. It's a very, very good read for that. There's already more stuff that Boulder's done since then, but it does give you a good sense of it. I see a couple of people have helpfully pointed out a couple of bugs and things like that, which I will SWAT today with my web developer. And we're going to continue to put content on. And one thing you'll see pop up on our website is an events page where I'll list the stream for our Thursday meeting. So anybody who wants to come, jump in. You can come as an audience member. And if you want to come up on screen, I can pull you up on screen if you have questions. But we're going to get those going, not this Thursday, but next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And you'll be able to find the details for that. So with that, this is Susie knows and Tech knows this has been just a year in the making with many ups and downs. But I'm very excited that it started. And I'm really, really thrilled. Hopefully this struck a chord with some of you. And you'll reach out. And again, we're here for you to kind of talk through what you're thinking. You're not on your own. And with that, we will be back next week. Kara Maizano, who was one of the authors of the Integrated Industry CDR report, very relevant to this, actually. It's this amazing report that RMI wrote about how CDR can fit into different industries, technically within their value streams and supply chains. So she's going to be on to talk about that paper, but it resonates definitely with a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. And then we'll keep going from there. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next week. Bye.